I believe healing and growing is an ongoing process. There is no end. There is no arrival point. There is no final destination. And a matter of fact, it's something that we should all be striving to do every day. Heal and grow physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. Strive to do the best we can in those areas. Because the more we heal and grow ourselves, those around us benefit. Our loved ones, our families, our communities, the nation, and ultimately the world.
Hi, Frank. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Mark. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Welcome to Peak Performance Perspective, where we help entrepreneurs master health, wealth, and relationships. Let me ask you, what does peak performance mean to you?
I probably won't say anything you haven't heard before, but for me, peak performance means a person at least striving to be the best version of themselves that they possibly can be. At least striving, because no one reaches perfection, but it's about the effort and the intent. And also, I believe peak performance is not only striving to be the best version of yourself, it's that version of yourself serving others, using whether it's your talent, your time, or even your interest to better others. I think that's the another part of peak performance. So
Everybody wants to be the best version of themselves, but inevitably they feel that there is some obstacle, whether internal or external, that
yes,
stops them from being that. So,
yes.
how do we go about navigating around those obstacles?
I think one way of doing that is to try to avoid what a lot of us tend to do, and that's compare ourselves to others. When we compare ourselves to others, we start measuring they're doing this and I'm not doing this. And then that's just adding more stress and pressure to us. I think it's Theodore Roosevelt who said comparison is the thief of joy. If we just focus on ourselves and what we're capable of doing, or at least striving to do what we believe we can do, we'll be fine. But we worry about what other people make, how other people dress, what they look like, what they've accomplished. And it gives us a sense of not being fulfilled when we do that.
But without comparison, how do we know where we stand? Like, I could think that I am
That's a
the
good question.
smartest guy there is. And if I'm not in a room with 49 other people out of the 50 who are better than me, I would think I'm the smartest. But if I'm in a room, I'm like, oh man, I got to scale up.
That's that's the tough thing to because you want to have some type of measuring stick. So I think we might be better served if we just measure ourselves against ourselves. Can you track your progress? Let's say you know about fitness and bodybuilding. You have the history there. So if I can only do 10 push-ups, but there's other people in my age group, I'm looking at them do twice as many. I can use that to motivate me, or I could use it to make me feel defeated. I need to focus on, I'm doing 10 now. I can only max out at 10 now. But if next week or 2 weeks from now I can do 15, that really should motivate me because now I'm like keeping up with me. I've heard golfers say, yes, you have the competitors, but I've heard golfers say golf is really about competing with yourself. I don't play golf other than miniature putt golf, but that's what I have heard from golfers. I find it to be an interesting sport. I don't think I have the patience for that sport because it seems really hard to hit a ball that small, that great a distance to put it in a small hole. That's, but yeah, I've heard them talk about competing with themselves. And it's fine if a person wants to use other people to help them strive more. There's absolutely nothing wrong with comparing yourselves to others if it helps to inspire or to motivate you. I'm all for that. A lot of people, Kobe Bryant was trying to surpass Michael Jordan, and that helped inspire him. I have no issues with that. Kobe was so driven, though. I think he really wanted to be better than Michael Jordan. I don't think it's a coincidence that Michael Jordan's number was 23 and he chose 24. I do not think that was a coincidence.
So, you brought up a great point about looking at competitors and either allowing ourselves to be motivated by it or becoming depressed because they're better than that. It really comes down to mental resilience. How do we
Absolutely.
build up that mental resilience so that we look at it as a positive thing that allows us to push ourselves, as opposed to something that is an excuse for us to hide ourselves under a blanket?
Right. I think it's a matter of accepting that not only is resiliency important, but the struggle is important because it's the struggle. That's how we grow. That's how we evolve. It's accepting that that's part of the equation. I teach at a local college here, and I'm always telling my students, I'm reminding them, life is not supposed to be a smoothly paved road. It's got twists, turns, hills, bumps, debris, and we have to learn how to navigate it because in the end, it benefits us. I don't work on a farm, but I heard, for example, if you have an egg with a baby chick inside, if you help that chick out of the egg sooner, it is probably going to die, if not be physically handicapped. Because while it's on the inside of that egg, it's growing and it's building its muscles. And as it's trying to chip its way out from the inside, it's strengthening its neck muscles, its back muscles, its leg muscles. So by the time it is able to get out the egg, it's strong enough to move and walk, and it may stumble, but it's that struggle that prepared it for what was to come. And so accepting that the struggle is what we need to not only build strength, but to build resiliency. I think that is so important. I feel like the younger generation, I don't know if that's something they're aware of. I don't know if older generations are instilling the importance of resiliency, but I think that is so important.
Prior to your current life, you had
Yes.
a illustrious career in radio and television.
Yes.
What was the defining moment in your life that led you to pursue therapy as a mission and not just a career?
Okay. First, I'm going to go back to high school for a second. When I was in high school, I was always the person that people brought their problems to. I had my guy friends, girls who I knew. Everybody was always bringing, and when you're in high school, you just really just have a lot of relational drama. Maybe you have some parent issues or whatever, but people were always coming in with their problems. It got annoying with the girls because usually there were girls who I liked, and girls be bringing their problems that involved other guys that weren't me. And be like, okay, I'm the good guy here. I'm here for you, and you're looking at this other guy. But okay, fine. I should have known that was a sign, but I didn't really think about, hey, maybe I should be a therapist one day. I really didn't think about it. I went to undergrad, I went to college, and I majored in communications, focusing on radio and television. And I remember when I was there, I took a psychology class, just one psychology. I was fascinated with this class. I was reading the textbook just on my downtime. It was just so amazing. But for some reason, I struggled in that class. And if I'm not mistaken, I think I got a D out of that class. And when I got that grade, because I was like, I guess I'm not supposed to be a therapist, and never thought about it again and stayed on the track of radio and television. Fast forward, after spending about 7, 8 years in radio, I moved out to LA and started working in television behind the scenes on different shows and like Family Feud. Richard Simmons had a show, Richard Simmons Dream Maker. Howie Mandel had a daytime talk show, the Family Feud. And then there was a show called Divorce Court. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. And I got on that show, and it turned out I didn't like working on that show because there was a lot of pressure as an associate producer trying to get the guests to come on the show. You need the husband and the wife to agree to come on this program and air all their business on national television and hopefully bring a little drama with it. And I just struggled with that show. And then one day I remember listening to a potential guest because we'd have to get a lot of background information. What happened in your marriage? Why do you want to be on the show? We have to get all the how long did you guys date? But there was this one woman I was listening to, and she said something that I knew I couldn't use her as a guest. But at the end of that, I don't know, 45, 50-minute conversation with this woman, and I told her, unfortunately, we won't be. She said, you know what? That's okay. I just want to thank you for taking the time to listen to me because I really feel I don't have that. I haven't had anybody who I can just talk to. And just doing there, just being there for me has really helped me. And after I got off that call, I was like, that's it. That's what, at least for now, is going to motivate me to do this job that I don't even like doing anymore. So every day when I got up, I was thinking, hey, Frank, you might be a blessing to someone just by listening to them. And it was just so fascinating to me. And then soon afterwards, this was during the year when America was attacked, the 9/11 situation. And of course, a lot of things got shut down because planes weren't flying anymore. And so we couldn't even get guests to come in to do the show. And it was at that time I was like, you know what? Maybe I should just go to school to be a therapist because it really seemed so fulfilling to me to be able to be there for people. And so literally the very next semester, I found a school and went and enrolled in this master's program, and I've been doing it ever since then.
You talk a lot about growing through challenges.
Yes,
In your walk of life, you've met so many people.
hear their stories.
How do we know if we are truly growing versus surviving?
Another great question. There is a thin line between surviving and growing. That's one of those things where you really have to track. Only you will know that. Sometimes it's thinking about how far you've come, where you've been. I find myself with several of my clients, if I've been with them for a while, I like to take them back and remind them how they were when they first came into the office, what they felt like, what their actions were, because I want them to see. Because sometimes we make progress, we don't even reflect, we're so busy looking forward, we're not willing to acknowledge where we came from or the progress that we've made. So I want them to be aware. Remember how we couldn't even have a session without you being tearful? I want them to be reminded of that. And I think as long as there's growth, that's really all I hope for people. And that's all I look for me. Just growth is a continued process. Something else I tell my students is that I believe as long as we have breath in our bodies and a brain that's functioning within a healthy parameter, we should be trying to grow and evolve. And I think sometimes we get caught up thinking once we get here, we've arrived. But we should always be trying to be the best version of ourselves, whether it's mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially. That should never stop. It should just be a journey instead of a destination. And so I think it's helpful to know that, yeah, we might be surviving right now. And sometimes just staying afloat, that's where we are in our lives. Just hold on to that piece of wood and just keep your head above water and until as long as you can. And then at some point, maybe something will come to you or somebody will come to you or you get some inspiration. Maybe I can let go of this log and maybe I can start swimming or but it's but that may be part of the progress too, part of the journey. Right now I'm just surviving. Right now I'm overcoming. I'm dealing with the challenges. And so I don't really have a clear cut answer. I hope that kind of addresses it a little bit, but it's definitely so much of life is the journey. So much of life is stage one, stage two, stage three. And if you're in survival mode, keep surviving until you get stronger and then you can attempt more.
How do you guide people who feel stuck even after years of trying to heal?
I think I mentioned that in my book. I mentioned there's a chapter called Challenges in Therapy, where one of the challenges is helping clients who feel stuck. And that could apply to a lot of different things. Some people are stuck in their careers. Some people are stuck in dysfunctional or toxic relationships. Some people are just stuck with the lack of fulfillment. They just stuck. And there's no one technique or intervention that I use for anybody. It's really a matter of me trying to get to know the person in front of me as best as I can. Sometimes it might mean going back to their past. Sometimes it means focusing on their present. Sometimes it means examining what they want for themselves in the future. And then it's a matter of me just trying different things to get them unstuck. Find that people usually only change for one of three reasons. This is most people, in my opinion. People either change because they're fed up. They had enough of whatever is going on. I can't do this anymore. I am done. Whatever this is. And then that'll motivate somebody to change. Another reason people change is because they want to do it for somebody else. I'm not saying that's a bad reason. I'm not saying it's the best reason, but some people, they can't change for themselves, but they'll change for their child. I remember my mother, she used to smoke before I was born, but apparently I was told as an infant, I had a problem with being around where there was smoke. And so my mother quit smoking cold turkey. So we will change for somebody else, especially someone we love, or maybe somebody we're trying to impress, that too. And then the third reason I think people want to change is because life comes along and punches them in the mouth and makes them change. If you suddenly your liver is all torn up because you drank most of your life and the doctor says you got to give up drinking, that's life punching you in the mouth. I'm forced to change now. And so trying to help people get unstuck sometimes may mean looking at which one of those three can inspire this person or motivate this person to make a change. Maybe they don't have enough strength to change for themselves, but maybe I can say, think about your kids. What do you want for them? So this is me just trying different things to pry them into no longer being stuck. So, but like I said, everybody's different. Some people need the life to punch them in the mouth. Some people will do it for somebody else. And some people, I'll say, like, when is it enough? I had this one client last year. She came to me. It was all about her job. She was so stressed out about her job. She could not even talk about her job without crying. This is a middle-aged woman. It was so difficult for her. Like she was literally, I would say she was suffering from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, just being at this job. And the very first session, I told her, I said, you have a choice. I'm going to support you, whichever decision you make. So here's your options. One, I can help support you with doing what you need to do to leave this place of employment because it's clearly very toxic for you. I can help you. We can brainstorm different options. We can explore your interests and your gifts and your experiences. I said, or I can support you by trying to help you find ways to deal with your thoughts and your emotions while you're in this working at this place. And when I said that, she got so emotional. And it was all of a sudden in that moment, she realized she did not want support in staying there. She realized I have to leave. Just for some reason, and she told me this. She told me this the next few sessions. She kept saying, I just keep hearing in my mind you saying you'll help me manage my feelings to stay on this job. And she was like, no, I don't want you to help me do that. So just that, because previously she had been stuck in that job. She didn't have enough motivation to do anything. And as I speak to you right now, she did quit. And now
Wow.
she's pursuing her dreams, things that she's always wanted to pursue, and businesses, some entrepreneurial things. But that was an instance in that one situation with that one client, with that one individual of how I helped her get unstuck by she figured out what was important to her. And it wasn't staying in that place.
Confronting the deep core issues that we have can be very challenging sometimes. And
Mhm.
it's nicer to just duck and hide. How do you differentiate between genuine healing
Mhm.
versus avoidance, which is masked as progress?
Yeah, a lot of people avoid because it's easier to do. It's just, it's like, I don't see it. I think true healing, though, occurs when whatever the issue is, whatever the struggle has been, if we can think about it or look at it and we feel at peace, that's when we know healing has occurred. Whatever the situation, whether it's a toxic relationship, whether it's a business that didn't go the way we wanted to go to, if we can finally accept, okay, that didn't meet our outcomes, but I'm okay, now we're at peace. And I would hope that most people are striving to have as much peace in their life as they possibly can. But to have peace, a part of that means incorporating acceptance of for whatever it was and being okay, just being okay with that. And but if you're hiding something or you're not dealing with something, that doesn't feel peaceful at all to me.
Yeah.
That's not, that's ignoring. That means the problem will always be there. It's just, you're just brushing it under the rug for now, but it's probably going to pop back up or creep back up in one way or another. Something's going to come up. And until you address it, it'll continue. Or I don't know who said it, might have been Wayne Dyer, but I've heard somebody say life gives you these tests or quizzes. And life is okay if you fail them, because if you fail them, it's just going to give you another chance to pass the test later on. So it's coming back. So you might as well try to deal with it at some point. But like I said, if somebody wants to ignore something, if they feel they can't deal with it, then that's their decision. I know there are people who've experienced significant trauma, and sometimes revisiting the trauma is too much for them to deal with it. And then that's fine. Then if you can't deal with it now, maybe later, or maybe never.
What do you think is a misconception most people have when they're thinking about healing?
I think people believe that one, healing can happen quickly, which it's possible. But if you think about the injuries that your body may experience, the more severe the injury, the longer it will take to heal. If you got a little scratch, that's not going to take time to heal. But if you've experienced something deeply traumatic or a really horrible situation, that's going to take longer to heal. So, one, it might be a misconception about healing that it can be done quicker. They, like some people may go to a therapist and go, I thought after 2 or 3 sessions, I'd be healed, depending on how deep your wounds were. You didn't deal with like you were in that situation longer than 3 weeks. So it's probably going to take you longer than 3 weeks to heal. It's so that's one misconception. Some people may feel that healing means never feeling the wound or the injury or the pain ever again. I've had a lot of clients come to me dealing with grief and loss issues, and I just want the pain to stop. And over time, if they're grieving, the pain will subside, but it doesn't mean from time to time it won't resurface. Whether it could be, wow, I thought I was doing okay with losing my grandfather, but then the holidays came around and I remember we would always be together. And now every year around this time, they get a little down. Healing does not necessarily mean you never have to deal with something again. So that is yet another misconception. So we have it may not happen as quickly as you want it. And there may still be some residual effects. Like a major wound can heal, but that doesn't mean you won't have the scab or the scar. If someone takes a knife and or you get cut on a sharp object and you have to get stitches, it'll heal, but the scar will remain. It'll still be there. So you'll still know what happened to your arm. So those are, I would say, the two biggest misconceptions about healing.
You are in a very interesting position because you work with clients who are looking to be better, but they're
Yes,
also coming to you with a lot of things from their past that they need help and support with.
yes.
And in our lives, regular people lives, we have people we love that we can
Hmm.
see are struggling and we want to support them, but we
Hmm.
also know they need to hear the hard truth. How do
Yes.
you balance empathy and accountability at the same time in your sessions?
Wow. Empathy and accountability. I need to jot those down. Those are two big ones. Empathy and accountability. Okay. So typically, when I work with a client, my number one priority initially is building the rapport, the therapeutic rapport, the relationship, or whether it's a teenager, an adult, or even a couple. Because I feel like without that, I'm not going to get that far. They need to feel safe, they need to feel comfortable, and rapport building is where I start with that. Now, a big reason why building that therapeutic relationship is so important because at some point I may challenge them. I may confront them. I may see where how much they're willing to acknowledge. I'm going to go into accountability. I'm going to be empathetic, but I don't want to go there too soon. So it's about, for me as a therapist and even as a friend or a husband, it's about knowing where this person is and what they can probably handle right now. And I don't have all the right answers all the time, but sometimes I'll say, let me see how they handle this. Let's see. Because if I give them too much too soon, I may offend somebody. I may hurt somebody's feeling. They may be like, I'm not coming back to see you again, Frank. But there are times, you know what, when I do a couple session, the very first session, I listen to what brought them to therapy. I want to hear both of their perspectives. And then after I do that, at some point, I give them a kind of review or an assessment about what I think I heard. Are there issues? I explain how I work as a therapist, especially with couples and even with individuals. But during that time when I'm explaining how I work with people, I tell them, I give them a heads up. At some point, I'm going to challenge you. I may challenge you actually during a session, and it might make you feel uncomfortable. It might be something I said or how I said it. Or I said, I may challenge you to do something outside of the session, in between our meetings, because that's part of accountability sometimes means confronting or challenging people. And I have to do that, but I'm trying to do it. There's the other word, empathy, showing as much empathy and compassion as I can. Like I said, it's a very delicate balance, but and ideally, we want everybody, even people who aren't therapists, should try to do that as well when they're talking to people who they love. It's tough to just come out and say things. Okay, so this is funny too. I was talking to a couple of people about this recently. There's certain terms that I feel like we used to use in the past that we don't use anymore. For example, I don't know if common sense is really a thing now because people seem to be a lack of common sense. That's one thing. I remember when I was younger, I was told or taught if you can't say anything positive, don't say anything at all. No one says that anymore either. A term that I used to hear, but I don't hear it as much now, is constructive criticism. People used to, like a supervisor, may say, "Hey, would you mind if I pull you to the side for a minute? I have some constructive criticism." And we knew that meant they were going to try to give us some information that may not feel good, but it was for our own good. Now, when you say, if you were to tell somebody I have some constructive criticism for you, I think they only hear the second word. I don't think they hear the constructive piece. And sometimes constructive criticism is about accountability. It's about challenging that person. Hey, you can do better. You can be better. Have you thought about doing it this way? Because the way you're doing it now is not as effective. But it's so now I don't even think most corporate offices, I don't even think they use words like some sort of accountability review. They do some reviews, like they don't say constructive criticism anymore because people are a little more sensitive now than I
Too
believe they were.
triggering.
Exactly. Now you don't want to trigger anybody now, so people can't. They have to find words that people can digest a little bit easier.
One of the biggest reasons for conflict or strife in a relationship is due
Mhm.
to unmet expectations.
Absolutely,
And
100%.
you just mentioned that one of the first things you do when you take on a new client is you build a relationship with them.
Yep,
But they don't always come through on what you're asking them to do.
absolutely.
So, how do you deal with the unmet expectation in this relationship that you're forming with your clients?
It's interesting because I'm trying to decide how much I want to tell you about how I got to where I got to. But if okay, so let me. Many years ago, I think I was in my 20s, I read a book about a woman. She claimed to have had a near-death experience. I don't know if you or the audience is into past lives or anything like that. So I have no idea if it was true or not. But this woman was giving her account of her near-death experience. She died, and she was saying what she saw. And she said something that always stuck with me. She said when she was as a spirit, she said she was up in some, I don't know, space, heaven, whatever, and she could see these little balls of light that were zooming toward the planet. These balls of light represented the spirit of individuals. But here's the part that stood out. She said these balls of light were choosing the life experiences they wanted to have on Earth. She said it was similar to us choosing what classes we want in college. And so that always blew my mind. I was like, so she's saying that a person decided in some other form, I want to experience what it's like to be a homeless person this time. Maybe next time I'll see what it feels like to have 8 kids. And so the thought that somebody may have chosen the path that they're on was really fascinating. But now here's how it ties in with clients today and expectations. Not that I know that we chose the life that we lead. I have no idea. I have no idea if any of that's true. But I do know that every one of us are on our own individual journeys. We all have our lives to lead. And when I'm with the client, I don't know what your journey was supposed to be. And so I accept whatever life you're leading, whatever choices you make, because it's your journey. I used to feel responsible for fixing people or saving people. That's a lot of pressure on me. People need to learn how to save themselves. So that was a lot. And I realized, like, you know what? Maybe their journey was to struggle with that issue for most of their life. Maybe that's their journey. And so now I respect people's journeys. And by respecting people's journeys, whatever that path is supposed to be, I am now able to lower my expectations of my clients and everyone I know. I don't have, I feel like I have such more of a peaceful life because I don't have expectations, or I try to manage I have some expectations for my wife. I don't have any for anybody, like I don't, and there are only a few. If I go to a drive-through, I'm not expecting them to necessarily get my order right. So I'm going to check it before I drive away. But if I don't check it when I get home, I'm not even that angry. I'm like, you know what? They're not perfect. I should have checked it before I drove away. I'm not even upset because my expectation, if the cable guy tells me he's coming between 9 and noon and he comes at 1 o'clock, I was hoping he would be on time, but I wasn't expecting it. And so the same thing when clients don't make progress or they're not adhering to suggestions and interventions, I literally tell myself, maybe I'm planting seeds and maybe these seeds take a while before they take root and start growing. I'm just going to be a seed planter for now. Maybe what I'm doing with them won't produce results or won't be a harvest until long after they stop seeing me. I don't know, but I'm not going to have that expectation of them and which I'm just going to do what I can to serve them the best of my ability.
What do you hope listeners take away from our conversations today?
There's so many things I hope they take away.
What is your number one thing? You
Number
have to
one,
get this.
okay, I really want them to know that I believe healing and growing is an ongoing process. There is no end. There is no arrival point. There is no final destination. And a matter of fact, it's something that we should all be striving to do every day. Heal and grow physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. Strive to do the best we can in those areas. Because the more we heal and grow ourselves, those around us benefit. Our loved ones, our families, our communities, the nation, and ultimately the world.
And for those listening that might be thinking, I don't need healing because I'm not broken. What is the message you want to tell them?
When I mention healing, doesn't necessarily mean broken. Healing could mean just being better. Healing could mean eliminating certain thoughts that aren't productive, certain tendencies, or even certain habits that aren't beneficial. Thinking negatively, maybe that's where you require some healing. Maybe you're too hard on yourself. Maybe the healing needs to come there. Maybe you're a perfectionist. Maybe you're an overthinker. And there's nothing wrong with being a perfectionist or overthinker, but if you do it to the point where it's causing disharmony or anxiety or stress or frustration, then that too would be an area you need healing. It's people have to be willing to look inside and see where there's areas that might need to be addressed. And sometimes that takes a lot of courage sometimes to actually look inside and say, where can I do better? Where can I be better? What part of me healing may not have been addressed? And most of us grew up in families. Nobody's family is perfect. A lot of times I think we're trying to grow from whatever we experienced growing up because most of us experienced something in our childhood or that may have bothered, maybe not. But yeah, and that's fine. And if a person feels they do not need any healing, they're entitled to think that and they're entitled to believe that. And that actually, maybe that is their truth. But for those of us who are not perfectly healed, then we should continue to strive to do so.
Frank, how do listeners connect with you? Tell us what's going on in your life.
Let's see, they can connect with me. So I have a website, which is my author's name, ffrancisjones.com. So it's F, then FRANCISJONES.com. They can find out more information about me, about my book, Heal and Grow Lessons Learned in My Journey as a Mental Health Professional. I also have some merchandise on the website as well. So it's just some t-shirts, some hoodies, and coffee mugs that have some themes or messages that I mentioned in the book, things and messages that I believe in that are also on those merchandise items. And so there's that. And I also have an Instagram where I try to post some motivational things. I have these like 3-4 minute chats on there. And my Instagram is F Francis Jones, the number 4, and then healing. So it's FRANCISJONES, the number 4, healing, HEALING. And at this time, I don't really have anything planned right now upcoming. I have something I'm working on, but you know how you work on something, you don't want to put it out there yet? It's part of a big presentation. I'll say this much. There's a big presentation I'm working on, and it targets or speaks on the role that fathers play in our lives or don't play in our lives. And it centers around fathers, the need for fathers to be present and for them to be healed. But so I'm working on that, and I'll just leave it there for now.
On a cliffhanger. If you're
Yeah,
working on it, oh, I know it's going to be great. And I can't wait to talk about it when it does
I
come
hope
out.
so.
Frank, thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for helping us get a little peek in your mind. For anybody that wants to reach out, there will be information in the show notes so they can reach out to you. Thank you for
Mark, thank you for having me. It's really great.